Here's a number that should stop you cold. Right now, the artificial intelligence answering your customer service chat is also helping run power grids, water treatment plants, and emergency response systems across more than 15 countries. The same company behind it, Anthropic, just confirmed that its newest system, Claude Mythos, has been quietly wired into critical infrastructure on 4 continents. Think about that for a second. The thing most people know as a chatbot is now sitting inside the machinery that keeps the lights on. This is not a pilot program in some lab. This is live today in the systems that nations literally cannot function without. Anthropic announced this on the 2nd of June, and the scale caught even seasoned engineers off guard. 15+ countries is not a soft rollout. To put it in perspective, that is roughly the population reach of the entire European Union, all touched by one AI model managing real physical systems. Now, when I say critical infrastructure, I mean the unglamorous backbone of modern life. Electricity, clean water, transport signaling, the stuff you never think about until it stops. And Claude Mythos is not just reading reports about these systems. It is actively helping operators make decisions in real time. That raises an obvious question nobody seems ready to answer cleanly. What happens when the AI gets it wrong at the scale of a national power grid? Stick with me, because the way Anthropic built this to be safe is genuinely clever, and the risks are bigger than the headlines admit. So how did we actually get here? Rewind just 2 years, and Anthropic was best known for Claude, a careful, safety-focused chatbot that people use to draft emails and summarize documents. The idea of letting that same technology near a power station would have sounded reckless, but something changed. Anthropic built its reputation on a concept called constitutional AI, which is basically giving the model a written set of principles it must follow. Like a rulebook baked into its decision-making, that focus on safety became their selling point. While other labs raced to make AI flashier, Anthropic pitched theirs as the one you could trust with serious responsibility. Governments and utility companies noticed. Here is the context most coverage skips. Critical infrastructure around the world is run by software that is often decades old, written before cyber attacks were a daily threat. Operators are drowning in alerts, juggling thousands of sensor readings a minute, and they simply cannot watch everything at once. A water utility might track 10,000 data points across its network. No human team reacts to that fast enough. Anthropic saw a gap. An AI that can read every sensor, spot the one anomaly that matters, and flag it before a small fault becomes a blackout. They spent 18 months running trials with infrastructure operators, proving Claude Mythos could handle the pressure without panicking or hallucinating. By early 2026, the trials were done and the contracts were signed. And that brings us to what this system actually does under the hood, which is where it gets genuinely surprising. Let us open up the engine and see how Claude Mythos actually works, because the name itself is a clue. Mythos is what Anthropic calls a new class of model designed for what they term sustained operational reasoning. In plain English, older AI models were sprinters. You ask a question, they answer, and they forget everything. Mythos is a marathon runner. It holds context over hours and days, tracking the state of a system continuously rather than answering one-off questions. Picture the difference between a tourist with a map and a local who has driven the city for 20 years. The tourist can find a street. The local feels when traffic is about to snarl. That second kind of awareness is what Mythos is built for. Technically, it runs on what Anthropic describes as a monitored agent architecture. The AI can take actions, but every action passes through a safety layer that checks it against hard rules before anything happens in the real world. Think of it as a co-pilot that can suggest and even execute small adjustments, but a hard mechanical limit stops it from ever doing something catastrophic. For example, it might rebalance load across a power network, but it physically cannot order a full shutdown without a human signing off. Anthropic claims this design caught and prevented over 12,000 potential faults during testing. 12,000 moments where something could have gone wrong, quietly handled before anyone noticed. But the architecture has a weak point nobody at the launch wanted to dwell on, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let us make this concrete with what Claude Mythos is actually doing right now, because the real-world examples are wild. In one European country, The system manages voltage balancing across a regional electricity grid serving roughly 3 million people. When a sudden cloud bank cuts solar output by 40% in minutes, Mythos rerouted power from battery reserves and neighboring regions before a single home flickered. A human control room, Anthropic says, would have needed several minutes to even diagnose the cause. The AI did it in under 2 seconds. Picture a goalkeeper who moves before the ball is kicked, reading the striker's hips. That is the speed advantage we are talking about. In a Southeast Asian city, Mythos watches the water network, predicting pipe failures by spotting tiny pressure changes that signal a crack forming underground. It flagged a failing main 3 days before it would have burst, saving a neighborhood from losing supply. Over in a Nordic country, it coordinates train signaling, smoothing delays across hundreds of kilometers of track. Each of these systems used to need a room full of specialists staring at screens around the clock. Now a smaller team supervises the AI, stepping in only when it raises a hand. That is the promise. One tireless operator watching everything at once, never blinking. Never tired at 3 in the morning when most failures actually happen. But here is the twist nobody expected. The very thing that makes Mythos powerful, its reach across so many systems, is also exactly what makes the next problem so frightening. Now let us put this in context, because Anthropic is not the only player eyeing your power grid. The obvious comparison is with the other AI giants. OpenAI and Google have both built powerful general models, but they have largely stayed clear of directly controlling physical infrastructure. Their systems advise. They generate plans, write reports, answer operator questions. Claude Mythos crosses a line the others have hesitated at. It does not just advise, it acts. That is the fundamental difference, and it cuts both ways. Then there is the old guard. Companies like Siemens and General Electric have run industrial control systems for decades using traditional automation. That software is rigid but predictable. It follows fixed rules. If this reading goes above that number, trip the switch. It never improvises. Mythos is the opposite. It reasons, adapts, and handles situations nobody pre-programmed. Imagine the difference between a thermostat and an experienced building manager. The thermostat reacts to one number. The manager understands the whole building. The trade-off is stark. Traditional systems are dumb but utterly reliable. They do exactly what you told them every time. An AI is brilliant, but by its nature, harder to fully predict. Anthropic claims Mythos reduced response times by around 70% compared to traditional automation in their trials. 70% faster is enormous when seconds decide whether a fault becomes a blackout. But speed is not the only scoreboard that matters here. Because when you hand judgment to a machine across 15 countries at once, you create a brand new kind of risk the old systems never had. And now here's where the real story starts. Here is the part that keeps security experts up at night. When 15 countries run their infrastructure on variations of the same AI model, you have created what engineers call a monoculture. And monocultures are dangerous. Think of farming. If every field plants the exact same crop, one perfectly adapted disease can wipe out the entire harvest in a season. Diversity is what keeps a system resilient. Now apply that to power grids. If a single flaw or a single clever attack can fool Claude Mythos, that same weakness potentially exists in every country running it at once. A traditional grid in Germany and a traditional grid in Japan fail in different ways, for different reasons. But if both lean on the same AI brain, they suddenly share a single point of failure spanning continents. Security researchers are especially worried about something called prompt injection, where an attacker feeds the AI carefully crafted data designed to trick it into making a harmful decision. Imagine slipping a forged note into a manager's inbox that looks official enough to act on. Anthropic insists its safety layer blocks this, and the hard mechanical limits prevent catastrophic actions. But no system is perfect, and the stakes here are measured in millions of people. There is also the quieter concern: dependence. Once operators trust the AI to watch everything, human skills fade. A generation of engineers may never learn to read the raw signals themselves. And if the AI ever goes down, who is left? Who actually remembers how to fly the plane manually? That question is the one nobody has answered. So what does all this actually mean for you, and how should you think about it without panicking? Let me give you a clear framework. First, understand the difference between AI that advises and AI that acts. When you read a headline about AI in infrastructure, ask one question. Can it actually pull the levers, or does it only make suggestions a human approves? That single distinction separates a helpful tool from a genuine risk. Claude Mythos can act, which is exactly why the safety layer matters so much. Second, watch for the word oversight. The healthy setups always keep a human in the loop for any major decision. If you hear of an infrastructure AI running fully autonomous with no human sign-off, that is the red flag to take seriously. Third, think about diversity. The strongest national systems will deliberately avoid putting all their eggs in one AI basket, keeping traditional backups that work even if the AI fails completely. So ask whether your country's utilities have a fallback. For your own life, the practical takeaway is simple. This technology is making essential services faster and more reliable today, and that is genuinely good news. But push your representatives and utilities to demand transparency about how these systems are tested and who is accountable when they fail. Demand that critical AI is independently audited, just like a bridge or an aircraft. The people who ask these questions now will shape the rules everyone lives with later. And that leads to the single biggest thing you should take away from all of this. So here is what this all means for you and what to watch next. We are standing at a genuine turning point. For the first time, an artificial intelligence is not just talking about the world, it is actively helping run the physical systems that keep society alive across more than 15 countries at once. Claude Mythos represents both an incredible leap and a real gamble. The upside is concrete: faster fault detection, fewer blackouts. Water and power kept flowing by a system that never sleeps and reacted 70% faster than the old automation. Anthropic genuinely built this with safety at its core, and that deserves credit. But the deeper lesson is about the trade we are all quietly making. We are swapping human judgment for machine speed and convenience for a new kind of shared risk. The single thing to take away is this: the question is no longer whether AI can run our infrastructure. It clearly can. The question is whether we build in enough diversity, oversight, and honest accountability before we lean on it completely. That is the conversation worth having now while we still have a choice. What do you think? Would you trust an AI to keep your lights on? Drop your take in the comments, because I read them and the best ones shape future videos. If this helped you understand what is really happening behind the headlines, follow for daily AI news. And I will keep breaking down the stories that actually matter. This is one to keep watching, because the next 15 countries are already lining up.